There's not dates. So trying to gather that information or find those financial statements, I got what the DA asked for and got what I needed to try to put on the public record, the minutes and things. There's 2 years of minutes I have been able to locate.
Yeah, I was just curious. It was like, if all this was going on over all those years, I was just curious that there was never an expectation to see bank statements or financials that didn't change from month to month. That was just my curiosity.
I never looked at them.
It's mind-boggling
Right.
to me. But anyway, I just want to say too that the DA's office should be commended on what they did just by looking at that paper trail there. I mean, I don't know what, I don't think they're funded for all that, but that's commendable.
Thank you. I appreciate that first question's excellent. She was using a program called QuickBooks, which is kind of an accepted accounting program. And essentially what you end up with is instead of the hard copy of the statements you get a generated account statement that looks pretty straightforward. Jessica, is that kind of what we were able to gather?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for what the board members requested at each meeting, but I did know that she did generate her own documents and was able to put whatever figure she wanted to on those documents and present it to the board members. She was in charge of her QuickBooks account, and I think Dave mentioned earlier, by the time they got a hold of the QuickBooks account, it was all destroyed. So we'll never know.
Surprising, but no copies of bank statements to the minutes or anything like.
I think if there were, they were the QuickBooks statements
Yeah,
instead of the original
I'm
statement.
talking about the actual bank statement.
Exactly, yeah. No, it would be the QuickBooks statement that she created.
I think the only thing we do know is that for the years 2006-07 and 2007-08, when the auditors did come through, she did a sophisticated enough job to fool them to pass audit on those years. So she created a sort of a credibility with those auditors, so by the time she canceled the auditors, and because she had been the competent bookkeeper for 3 years before she became general manager, she'd done the groundwork to, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it sort of created, okay, she's passed the audits, she's really good at doing the books, so I guess we take her word for it. It may not be, but it's understandable.
I can't answer what we're doing now. Now the bank statements go directly to a P.O. box, accessible only by the board. The board brings the bank statements, the actual bank statements, into the office of the finance committee. They initial that they've seen as they go through them. They're put in a binder on the shelf and are available for anybody to look at. That's what's done now.
That's great, that's happening now. Yes.
Okay, we're going to talk down here and then Carol in the back.
I noticed on Jesse's handout here, he did mention one thing here. It says on April 10th, 2011, a letter from the auditor, I'm sorry, my eyes are bad and the light's bad in here, stating that the loan payments were not made. And then this gentleman over here said that the auditor didn't request or notify the board that audits weren't done until 2012. So I'm wondering how they got a letter from the auditor in 2011 and why the auditor didn't tell them then that there hadn't been any notification.
Two different auditors.
Well, that's where, again, I'm confused when you're being so, not delegating which auditor you're talking about on all these documents. It's hard to follow as a public what they're talking about. And what is the loan they paid? What are you talking about? Which loan?
The minutes are online by each date. You can go back to the minutes yourself.
I'll answer them. I was in the minutes that year. They weren't very clear as to what auditor and what loan they're talking about. But as it turns out, this is a letter from the county auditor saying that payment $200,000 loan for the filter, the sand filter, that was this loan. It's a county loan. So that's nothing to do with USDA loans, nothing to do with those big loans. But it was not clear in the minutes. But I put it here because it seemed relevant. And this is a guide for people to look.
So then my question is that auditor knew then that audits hadn't been performed in 2011. Okay, so then what's been stated here is that it wasn't until 2012 that the auditor told the board that audits hadn't been done since 2008. So there's a conflict there in the two statements where the auditor is saying, hey, a loan isn't being paid, and it waits a full year before telling the board, oh, your audits aren't being done too. So there's a problem with that auditor, and I was pointing out is the auditor resigned right after that 2012, so.
I think 2012, John Montgomery, yes.
And by the way, I want to thank you and your team too, and a special thanks to Frank Richardson
Yes.
for doing his work, and it's been very difficult for him to come in a short period and give up his own time, going down and testifying on his own time for the insurance fraud, and I really want to put a thank you to him for doing his service here in the Community Service District.
No, Todd, I appreciate that. I agree with you, and I wrote a letter to his boss thanking him for going above and beyond the call of duty to not only come down and testify, but to help prepare and get things ready. He did a fantastic job, and we were very appreciative.
Could we have Carol in the back? You have a question, Carol? No.
I would like to say that I think that without training, you leave your board at risk, and therefore the district at risk. And I think the board needs to be trained. There's a lot of things that may have been caught if they've had training and realized that they shouldn't just accept QuickBooks books. There are training classes, that these people, right now, everybody in the community is upset with the board, but the board wasn't trained. And that's not fair to the board, nor is it fair to the district, nor is it fair to the people here. They need to be trained. It's important.
Minor?
This is to you, District Attorney. I realize that you're absolutely right. And I know that a lot of us are frustrated working as a bookkeeper in QuickBooks on a daily basis. I realize you can make numbers say whatever you want them to say. The reality is I work for my cousin. He trusts me to the end of the earth. But the reality is I don't sign checks. I don't make bank deposits. It's called trust, but verify. And my question is this: nobody starts out embezzling 50% of what a company is making. Clearly she started out slow and built up. It looks towards the end almost like she was begging to be caught. So I have a two-part question. Number one, she could not have falsified bank statements, although I'm seeing that if you went from 11 bank accounts to 3, there could be some confusion. And number two, I buy from Amazon like crazy. My neighbors see what shows up on my doorstep every day. We're talking about somebody who is purchasing almost $1,000 worth of product a month. If she lived here locally, somebody would have seen that.
I agree with
Are the
your
bank
2 points.
statements available, is my question
Yes.
to you. Were you able to find the bank statements and find, like if she's making payments on a credit card that the district wasn't aware of, that would show up in the bank statements. If she's paying herself multiple paychecks, it would have shown up in the bank statements. Am I wrong?
The bank statements were all destroyed. What she did was, and you're familiar with the software program.
But what about at the bank?
That's where we had to get them.
That's what I'm
That's actually
saying.
what we had to do, was we had to go back through and recreate the
Right.
years of
But
statements
she
from the
could
bank.
not have forged what the bank had, and she could not have falsified what the bank had
True,
if we would have gone to the bank.
true. At any point, I mean, that's how we got it. And had somebody done that in 2006, 2007, certainly, that's how we got our records. They did not come from her, they were not in the office. We had to go back through.
Right.
And I agree with you on the other point. She was getting hordes of things in to deliver to her house in Winnemucca. And there were no reports, no suggestions, no anonymous calls. But I appreciate your points.
Okay, Tamara.
Can I come up there, Kevin?
Huh? We'll just address, who are you going to address?
Well, everybody, including Mr.
If you have a question.
But I want everybody to hear me. If I seem emotional, I've had a bad week. I've lost my dog, I've lost a good friend, and my sister is dying in the hospital tonight. But I'm here to talk to you because, you know, you met me a while back, a few years back on the witness stand, and you intimidated me so bad, you know.
Well, I apologize.
Well, you did, and so I was frightened of you, okay? I think you should be on TV. Okay, you're pretty good. But I had to get over that tonight, and I don't know why I didn't listen to my divorcee, because he's a friend of mine, and he told me I needed to come to you. And I came here in 1999, and literally my life has been hell since I got here. I inherited the little road to hell. I own the road to the community service ponds. I own 10 commercial acres here, which are very important to Greenville. I'm vested in it for something good on that acreage. I don't feel that the way to money in this county for this town is through selling our water or making us a toilet of Plumas County. We should be thinking about hot water. We're sitting on a gold mine here. I am Helen Hollister's granddaughter, and I came back here because it's in my soul. I went to school here. I was basketball princess, okay? I was that. That's my claim to fame, okay? And I had such a hard time here because I have been so persecuted in this community because I've been fighting this community service board for 14 years, okay? That's a lot out of somebody's life. I was fighting in 1999 when Tom Hunter said he was going to bury this town in shit. Then it went on to another fight. If we were made the toilet of Plumas County, that Jane Little, on the last septic fight, was headed that thing up with the Forest Service. She lied to 100 people, ranchers here, got up at this table, pounded on it, and said, I had nothing to do with it. She had everything to do with it. We're not going to sell out the water or the crap to people that come in here. I grew up here and we have to protect this valley. I got so upset when I saw Dan McDonald's. He wrote an editorial, and he said, my God, $680,000. That was the number then. He said, why aren't the people of Greenville seething? I picked up the phone, I called him, and he said, well, tell me. He said, why haven't I heard from anybody? There's been no letters. So I started writing the letters. I don't know whether you read the letters. And I said, you people in Greenville, you business people, reach down in your gut and get to that meeting. And that was in January. And they came. We packed that room over there. And Pappenhausen, Tucker said they must resign, the board. Every business person except just a little handful that it was too personal for them. And I understood that why it was personal to them, okay? They said, please resign. They wouldn't do it, okay? Kevin, I have to say I just love you like a brother.
Okay, well, I just want to, real quick, I don't want to interrupt all this. I know you're going somewhere with it, but we're just kind of talking about the case and stuff. I know you're getting to a question. So
Kevin wanted forgiveness, okay? But forgiveness is not going to work here amongst friends. What we have is a good old boy system going on here in Greenville, and it's got to be stopped and it's got to be broken. I feel at this point, I really myself don't blame Brad, but he's in there. I don't blame Blake, he's new, and we also have a new member. But at this point, I want you all to know that in 2008, when you mentioned tonight, I'll get to other things that I mentioned here, that she was basically such a wonderful person in 2008 that somebody gave her high points. I can't remember what it was. And in 2008 is when I made my phone call to Jane Little. And I said to her, Jane, I think she's stealing. And Jane said to me, oh, Tamara. And of course, I'd already had a lot of trouble with these people, so they didn't like me anyway. And I said, I think she's stealing. And she said to me, we have audits. You want to know why I knew she was stealing? Because I owned the Bidwell House for years in Chester. I ran a high fashion store up there for years. And when I see a woman in a $200 blouse, dripping with gold, buying out of this community, a little white dog, a brand new car, living out of state, you know what? I knew she was stealing, okay? And if I could see it, there was a blind eye. There was a blind eye. Our board of directors put a blind eye to this. She had that whip of intimidation, if you read my letter. She had the whip of intimidation on this whole community. And Jane Little would just go, oh, just like it was nothing. Even.
you got a question coming for the PA.
Well, this is what I want to tell you. After I called back that up here, I went before the board, and the date I went before the board, so you'll know this, and it was in 2010 I went before the board, and I'll just read the most important part, because there was more at the beginning, because she was being a real bitch to me. And I said, it appears that the buck stops with Leanna Moore. Therefore, because of her inaccessibility, numerous negative experiences with her refusal to fix the Community Service District easement road to the sewer ponds, and most of all, public input about her qualifications, her poor people skills, and the lack of bringing a positive, productive environment to our community. I am requesting to the board that you ask for Leanna Moore's resignation. Let's join together and look in Plumas County for a local qualified replacement as our general manager. Let us all work together so we can be proud of our community. You know, what it was is they didn't do their job. A board of directors does have a job. You know, they do have an obligation to look. I have here where I was there the night they handed her all the bank accounts. You know, these people just let her run wild. I mean wild. And we have people in this community now that want to step forward and get on this board. You know we have had a recall. I know there's been apathy. I know there's been apathy in this community, and they've let these people sit on this board. They were not elected, okay? But they're going to take that little plastic crown off their head, and we need to get rid of Jane Little and Mike Hills for sure. And you got to take the bull by the horns. You know, you can take the L off a lover and it's over. You take the L off of Leanna and what do you get? It's not going to be over. It goes back to the board of directors. She's toast. She's done. It was nepotism. She was an heir.
Okay.
You know? No, one other thing I want to say.
That's what it is. It's a question.
Well, I think you did a wonderful investigation. Are you Jessica? And maybe what I had, I sat down with Frank Richardson because I was desperate when he first got the job. We sat in the park. I had 3 folders of so much fraud from this community. They have shipped in more crap down my road from out of this county, and it isn't on the books. It is not on the books. All that thousands and thousands of dollars worth of shit went by my house. Well, what's going to be done about it?
I know, but this isn't the forum.
Well, you're saying...
Where is the forum? We are not allowed to talk at board meetings and get a response. The board has refused to put it on the agenda to answer any questions of them.
Okay.
I want you to stand up
All right,
and...
then we'll get it on the agenda. We'll talk about it.
Why is Jane Little your dad's tenant? It's all too close. This is all too involved here.
Watch the wire.
Yeah, watch the wire right there. Anyway, it was,
But thank you,
this is,
Mr. Hollister. You know, I do appreciate you coming, and it's taken me this long to be able to come in. I even have some more things when I tried to save the town from all the crap, and it took a year out of my life and years out of my life. Let's not, and that water is the essence of life, and I'll swear to God, let me tell everybody, we're getting $54,000 a month, and our sewer and water bills are high. And then there's that's $600,000 a year. Tighten up your goddamn belt, quit buying those cars and trucks and girlfriends, and let's get on and live within our means in this community. You know, and not sell Greenville out. We're caught between the county seat and Lake Elmore with all the money. Okay, nobody understands that more than me, and we have to protect this community.
okay, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Susie.
How come Leanna was allowed to live in Winnemucca when she was doing the work for this county? Why was she allowed to live out of town and hold the position she held?
I don't know the answer to that. That was part of the negotiation probably in 2007, I would guess.
I just make an observation, it wasn't really pointed out here. When Joe Wilson left, the board tried, that board back then, tried for over a year to replace her, did interviews, and couldn't get anybody to accept the job. And Leanna had been there for 2 or 3 years as a bookkeeper, and I've seen this happen in other situations where you can't get somebody outside, you take what you got inside. And the I think they put it up correctly, negotiations were undertaken to get somebody, she had been the interim general manager, to take that position, and that was one of the conditions I assume she put up, and they accepted it. You know, it's partly because it took a year to get anybody to even accept the position. I'm not not saying it's right or wrong, but that was the pressure the board was under then, to get somebody to beat the gentleman.
And that's what the documents look like. I wasn't there and I don't want to speak for the board, but.
Any other questions?
Right here.
Okay,
Okay.
Tom.
The follow-up from the February meeting, it was asked if any other federal crimes were committed, whether crossing state lines. Part of this money is apparently what was told at a meeting in Crescent Mills this month was these bridge loans, that she stole the money that's supposed to pay back these bridge loans. Okay, that's federal money, that USDA money. Did that money cross the state line? And is there any other, it was asked, you remember, about
Yeah,
any
absolutely.
other law enforcement or JOD,
And I'd be
DOJ?
I'd be happy to answer that. That's an excellent question and a good point. Not only are the federal loans implicated here, but also the fact that if you're charging something where you're victimizing somebody in California and you're receiving the loss in Nevada, crossing state lines like that, opens up some federal jurisdiction. What I could not share with you at the last meeting is that we have been working closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento. We have provided them every piece of paper that we've stumbled across. They have everything we have. Their office does not necessarily work as quickly as we have to, but they have all that information. I have not been notified as to whether or not they're going to seek federal prosecution, but that was my request to them, and I have forwarded them everything that we have.
District Attorney, does that mean that they have jurisdiction to seize property outside of the state, or do you have the ability to do that with the warrant you have at this point?
With the restitution order, it's a judgment, so a lien could be placed on property anywhere. It gets a little bit complicated, as Mr. Reichel pointed out.
Okay.
The federal government can also prosecute for federal crimes, and that's something that, again, is out of my control, but we've tried to at least set things up so that they have all the information to do that.
If they do prosecute, is their judgment going to trump yours? Would they be able to supersede your judgment?
It's an excellent question, and it's an answer it's one of those, it depends on what they charge. There are certain circumstances where you're exactly right. They could supersede us. They could be prevented from prosecuting on certain things because of what we did, but that's something that they're probably looking at. But very good questions.
Yeah, just basically on the first point, a judgment in California can be registered in other states and used to collect in those states.
I was just thinking
So-
maybe if we had a federal writ behind it, it might give it a little more impact. I just didn't know.
I think one question there would be, in California, it's very clear, as Dave pointed out, that restitution has first priority over fines on any money collected. I'm not sure whether the federal system is as victim sensitive, so I don't know either.
Can I do one follow-up, Kevin?
Sure, then we'll go to Rick.
These bridge loans. Didn't that take board action to get that financing for this USDA loans? So you got a bridge loan to pay the contractors off in a timely manner. Didn't that take board action? The board had to approve to go get that loan.
Again, that's an excellent question. I'd probably refer that to the board in the minutes from that period of time.
I can answer that question. That loan was a state loan, or CSD. That loan was secured to enable the membrane plant process, the building process. In other words, it takes time for the grants to come into the district. The contractors that build the district, they expect to get paid a lot sooner than the grant money comes in. So it's my understanding, because this was my first one with the membrane plant, my involvement, that it's normal practice to get what's called a bridge loan. It's a line of credit, whereas the bills from the contractors come in. The line of credit is used to pay them, and then as the grant money comes in from the state or the feds, it pays back that loan. Now this process, yes, it does have to be board approved, and it wasn't approved. It wasn't in the minutes. It was required for the job of the project.
Well, then wouldn't the board know that that bridge loan didn't get paid off? I mean, the
Not-
auditor said in 2011
Yeah.
that the loans aren't paid off. So the board knew that the loans aren't being paid off, therefore, where'd the money go to?
That's correct. It goes with the timeline. As the loans were not paid in 2011, that if you follow the timeline, there's a whole bunch of things that happened in 2011, especially near the end, that led into 2012. Follow it. Yes?
Okay.
Yes.
Rick?
Thank you.
With this fraud insurance, if the district gets a check, does that come off that restitution amount, or is that just?
There's those details need to be worked out. It's a good question. I didn't know Mr. Wright with that. It was more important to me we called a meeting on Friday because I got an offer from an insurance company. We had fraud insurance, and when I tried to claim it, they told me they wouldn't pay the fraud insurance because it hadn't been paid. I said, well, it wasn't paid because of fraud. How do you not pay fraud insurance because of fraud? Right? And they laughed out loud, and told me, yeah, it's been fraud. So as far as the restitution money goes, getting that money in, there's what Mr. Wright was trying to do with the district attorneys to help him with. Also internally, I've been spending a lot of time in trying to get tax revenue back. If you think about that $421,000 or so, the district was charged payroll tax on that. And the payroll tax is not paid on time, so we had penalties and interest on that. So there's $113,000 I'm working with the IRS right now to try to get back in. And that would probably come off the restitution. The insurance money right now, same thing. There might be some things you can do with it, but that probably come off the restitution, which is fair because it's not lost.
Right.
But in fighting the changes with the insurance company claim their offer, there's a change that we requested, and that's that they change their stipulation that if we were to receive any restitution money, they get paid first. And I told them, well, for me to accept this, we want that change. The district gets paid first, the community gets paid first, and after they're paid in full, then the insurance can get paid. So that's one of the changes that we made, and also some timing issues. But the district is working hard to get what it can, and some of that losses too. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was curious, you're gonna have a hard time paying that off.
All I can do is look at today, try to make sure things work today, set things up for tomorrow, set things up for future boards, try to get us recovered and operating efficiently, and never let this happen again. Not here, not in Chester, not anywhere around us, not anywhere in the state. That's why I invited California Rural Water Association, I invited California Special District Association, trying to share our experience and our mistakes with everybody. So, I mean, all you can do from this is try to learn from it and move forward from my position, and I'm trying to do that.
Okay, I think, Nancy.
Just a little bit of background. I was on the board from 2001 to 2005, and that was this period of great expansion and so forth. And at the time that I got on the board, we had a part-time secretary, and all the money and everything else was handled by the in Quincy. One of the reasons that I got on the board was the terrible situation with the water system. The fact that Mr. Jernigan kept getting increases from the public utilities and then not doing what needed to be done. And so during that period, we were able to buy the water system. And Leanna Moore was Jernigan's secretary. So it seemed, I mean, her bookkeeper. So it just seemed very logical. We bought the water company. We didn't know anything about managing the water company. And so suddenly, from this part-time employee, we needed a general manager, we needed a bookkeeper, and we needed people on the field to monitor what was happening and hopefully to get hold of some of the leaks, because we knew that we were paying for filtering and chlorinating water. You know, 3/4 or more of it was going down the drain and not getting to the people. So it was just a huge amount of things that impacted on the board at that time.
And so over the period of time, we advertised for a general manager, but we couldn't pay very much, so we got Joe Wilson, who was a young guy who hadn't much experience, but who was willing to accept that low salary. And then other employees and so forth. And so the fact that Joe Wilson irritated a whole lot of people in this community, that's a whole other story. But there needed to be a whole lot of tender loving care given to the community at this particular point. And Jane Little was very good at that. We did hold a couple of meetings where people had an opportunity to talk, and we did kind of settle down. At that time, we had a secretary who had also offended a lot of people. It just happened that all these things were happening at the same time. But we did reach out to the community, and during the time that I was on the board, well, before I got on the board, I was interested, and the board meetings were held upstairs above the fire station. And I kept screaming about that and saying that's illegal, you know, people with disabilities can't even get up there, and so forth. So during the time that I was on the board, we started having meetings at the office which we had. We advertised them and tried to get people to come to the meetings. People did not come to those meetings. So
Anyway, I just want to reiterate to keep our questions directed to the VA, and I, you know, I appreciate the stories and stuff, but the VA is in their office staff are here, and it's working on an hour and a half. They've got to get back because they've got lots of stuff to do, I'm sure. But one more back.
So I have a question about the restitution. You showed pictures of checks where she used a stamp or she forged a person's signature. So if you have an account and somebody embezzles out of your account, which is what she did, she embezzled, it's usually covered by the bank, right? So if they went after the bank to say for every year that she embezzled and we got $200,000 or whatever the limit is, 250, I don't remember, would that be part of her restitution, or would that be money that the district gets to keep, not added into the restitution, if they were able to get money back from the bank?
I think if there's any money that's recovered from insurance or the bank, I think the judge noted that he might be interested in using that to offset the restitution amount. So that would be an issue going forward where we'd have to go back before the judge.
So would that be a possibility? Does that sound reasonable to you, that they could go back to the bank for embezzlement because even though she was an employee, she embezzled money from?
We see that on smaller amounts that we deal with on a daily basis. With this type of amount and the length of time that went from the time the check was cashed to the time that it was discovered, it may be more of an issue, but that's probably more of an issue for the district. And I think you've made a good point.
No,
because
I know what you're saying on the consumer thing. It's like the credit card business where somebody steals your credit card and uses it, you report it to the bank, and they say, okay, you don't have to pay that. And there may be comparable things in terms of somebody writing a check for $50 or $100. I don't know what those are, but it's certainly worth investigating to determine whether or not a claim can be had on that. The problem is the time lag between then and now. But I'll certainly inquire. It happens so happens my wife is a senior loan officer with Plumas Bank, and she will tell me who to talk to.
That's pretty awesome. My other question, and I talked to you about this before, was that I have had friends when they've gotten a divorce from a spouse who made a large amount of money. The judge ordered that he have a life insurance policy till the children on himself till the children are 24, payable to the wife. If she got a 10-year sentence, can't we get a 10-year life insurance policy on her? Just like if I was getting a divorce from a multi-million-dollar man,
tell you the same thing I told you before. I'll bet you the premium on that is at least $100,000 a year, if not more. It's the gamble, and that's just per year. And if she lives for 15 years, you've spent $1.5 million. And if you could even get an insurance company to write a policy for that kind of situation, it would cost you. I know because the Franklin Murder case involved $2 million in insurance, and they paid over $60,000 for 6 months on the wife who was 40-something, early 40s at the time. So the question is economics. Even if you could do it, it's highly unlikely. But like I said, if you can get a reputable insurance agent willing to write a really cheap policy, we can consider it. But I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
What about the husband on this? Wouldn't he not know something was amiss on this?
And that was the point a little bit earlier. I think that's an excellent point. I'm kind of in the same place you are. When we first saw what was being delivered to the house and the amounts of money and the types of things, it's one of those where we would immediately say, someone else must have known. Someone in the house must have known. As we worked through it, the evidence, the admissible evidence that we were able to gather wasn't enough to demonstrate that he committed a crime within our jurisdiction that we could prosecute. But I thought the same thing you thought.
He was not an accessory.
We could not prove that legally he was complicit within California where I could charge him. But I saw the same thing you did, and I agree with you.
Grace, Tammy, I have a short question for you.
If she carries out $3,000 a need at kind of evergreen, her got glasses on, I think her husband needs some of that. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to say is maybe, Mr. Hollister, that if some way, whatever board is sitting here in Greenville, that they understand that they are the boss of the general manager. And that when the general manager wants to buy something or do something, that he wants to do it, that he needs to go to that board and ask that board's permission. And they need to pay attention. We can't have, Jesse has become the voice of the board. We know that he got put in that position here. He became their voice. But, he is not the Ten Commandments here. The board of directors is the boss. And I hope that people here realize that whatever board of directors that we have sitting in those seats, they need to watch the general manager. Joe Wilson, out of control. Jim Hamlin, out of control. Leanna Moore, out of control. We need strong people in those seats who have the conviction to say, we need to take a peek at those bank accounts. We need to, before he goes off and builds a road into Wolf Creek, he needs to get permission when other people own the property to the middle of it. When things happen like that and we pay sexual harassment lawsuits out of our pockets, that's our money. This money, when you look at the small people in this town are holding this town on their shoulders. All the business people, including Kevin, including Pappenhausen, everybody, we're holding those people up on our shoulders, And the business people sometimes, and thank God for John Hunter here because he stood up in this, for us. It's time we just, we wouldn't have Greenville without the Social Security, the unemployment, and whatever it is here that people are on, And there are a lot of smart people here, Hollister, besides the little gang of the good old boys here. There really is.
Thank you, Tammy.
I want to get a legal question in here as far as criminality here. And, official misconduct and misapplication of funds, okay? The community service district is not supposed to be making money. Their rates have steadily gone up, okay, while Leanna Moore was stealing the money. The board approved those rate increases on their constituents. That's misapplication of funds. Okay, that is criminality. There's a criminal code to that. The board, without a rate survey being done, which would have required looking at the audits, they have steadily increased the rates. So there is criminality on this board. Leanna Moore was stealing from the community service district, a supposedly non-profit. The board was stealing from the community at the same time, allowing the community to be stolen from on misapplication of funds. So I think your office needs to look at the criminality from the board by allowing the rates to increase while theft is happening. That is physically impossible under California law. They're not supposed to make any money, and a rate survey would have shown that. If this year it costs a little bit more, and so the rates go up, and now this year it costs a little less, now the rates drop back down. There is no way that the rates are gone up and she was stealing the money. That's where the board is liable. It's not Leanne Moore wasn't stealing from the ratepayers. The board was stealing from the ratepayers.
Mr. Hollister, don't you think there's been a missing piece to this puzzle? Don't you think there's something that the community doesn't know here?
From the evidence that we've gathered, we charged the person, and when we went into this, we didn't know if there was going to be one defendant or 5 or 50. But from the evidence that we gathered and we looked at and we reviewed, there was one person that had criminal liability that we could charge with a particular crime.
I think there was blackmail here. I think there was blackmail here, and I also think that it hasn't been uncovered, and probably never will be, you know, because I've seen so much that's gone on here. And I hate it when people lie to the public, you know, and blatant lies.
I appreciate your sentiments. So we've got a little shop, but we do try and do our absolute best every time a case is referred to us and every time we need to act.
Last few questions, mine.
I don't know if you'd be the best one to answer this, District Attorney, or not, but I think probably part of the biggest concern that we have, and I think Tamara has brought this up, is that the reality is that the people in this community that are going to bear the greatest burden in this entire scenario are literally the ones who can least afford it. You know, I work, I don't make a killing, but I'm blessed to have a job. And there are months I have to choose whether or not I pay my water bill or I buy food. There's a little bit of anger in a community when you're talking about a majority of the people who don't even get to make the choice I'm making. They don't have a choice. They are the true victims in this entire scenario. And as a community, we have not protected them. What do we do to protect them? What do we do to give them an assurance that this is not going to happen again? This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And I love my neighbors. I didn't move back here because I don't care. I mean, I love everybody that lives in this valley. I sincerely care about the people who don't have the money to compensate for this mess. What do we do to heal this process? How do we get past this?
I think those are excellent comments, and I'll tell you, this is one of those cases that when it came through and we started to figure it out, what had been going on, you know, I'd have Jessica and Jeff running into my office saying, "Did you see this? Could you believe what she did?" You know, and when we'd see these things, we'd see your faces. It made us mad too. It made us angry. You know, we try and put that aside and be fair as we go through this, but this is one of those tough cases where the crime just makes you angry. And what I would suggest to you is your concern, I share it. And not only for this valley, but throughout Plumas County. I mean, we have a lot of districts that have volunteer boards with small budgets that I worry about. You know, I worry that tomorrow I'm going to get another one of these in, because it's not exclusive to our valley here. You know, we've got similar issues out in Portola and up in Chester. So I think what has been put in place by the district, and just looking at it from my standpoint, as not the district attorney, but just as a citizen of Plumas County, I think the steps that have been put in place and the checks and balances and the transparency certainly help. And like everyone here, I wish those were in place 8 years ago, and we weren't having to have this type of meeting. But those are the types of things that, as Mr. Reichel pointed out, this is, you know, one of those teaching moments. I hope it's a teaching moment for all of our special districts, because it's tough to have a volunteer board handling, you know, this type of heavy, substantive matter, the decisions that they're making, and having to rely on a very small workforce to get those things done. So I shared your concerns, and I'll tell you, on behalf of my office, this is one of those cases that we'll remember for a long time. But thank you for your thoughts.
And I just want to say, the reason I made the recommendation I did about the compliance procedure is, you can change people on boards as much as you want, but if you don't have the policies for those boards to utilize, you're going to end up with similar situations. It's not about the personalities, and frankly, I think if anybody's sensitive to issues, it's the people who've been in the grinder for the last 2 years on the board. And I'm not saying that, I'm just saying if you put new people on the board, make sure you have the policies in place to make sure that there are checks and balances to make sure the district gets the best. Just changing people isn't going to change anything.
Okay, Jackie?
As a suggestion, maybe the board needs to send the business to a third-party controller, like an equipment broker. If I get bigger in my business, instead of me doing all the book work, I send it to a broker, pay them X amount of dollars. They know the laws, they know everything, they can deal with it. It may cost a little bit, but it's less headache. I know you're broke.
That's what they're doing.
Done in June of 2012.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, they've got, the outside controller handles all the finances.
Oh, okay.
Any others?
Well, I have a flyer here, I guess Cameron was involved in the sewer trucks coming through town at one time. I don't know how long ago it was, but I'm wondering, Mr. Hollister, if was this part of your investigation? Was it, did you go that far back? Was this off the books, I guess?
No, sir, good question. We are tasked with specific things. Did specific crimes occur? What we were looking at specifically here was, did an embezzlement occur from the district? If so, who did it, and what was the scope of that embezzlement? So we don't have the luxury, nor do I have the authority to kind of take these broad views of things and just look for things that are wrong. Unfortunately, we have to be reactionary. People report crimes, we respond. So we're pretty limited in scope there.
So I guess this kind of an issue would be something that might be put on the agenda to be discussed if that was appropriate. It's kind of corruption.
Sure, and maybe a district meeting or a supervisor's meeting.
I feel the board of directors tempted this woman. They gave her so much rope that they tempted her. You know, Jane Little put in the newspaper that she wanted her damn name spelled right, you know? What the hell is that about? You know,
What kind of agenda is that, though? Appreciate your comments, so. Anybody else, any questions? I really want to say thanks to the DA. Oh, Rick in the back.
Are you getting hungry yet?
Huh? All right. I really want to say thanks to that. A big round of applause for our district.